We're happy you're with us today. I'm Bill Conger, Chief Curator of the Peoria Riverfront Museum. And with me is one of my favorite people and friends of the museum, Bill Heidrich.
Thanks for asking me here. It's great to be here, and what a wonderful opportunity to discuss these great works of art that are on display here at the museum.
We have a little bit of a tour to walk through, and I wondered if you would maybe talk about a few of the works in Solitude and some of the other exhibitions in our museum.
Sure. I think it's terrific as we enter the galleries. The first thing we see are these two recent acquisitions, two glass sculpted busts by Nicolas Africano. Very, very powerful, evocative works that remind us of works of the great Italian artist Bernini, the Baroque, the passion of the Baroque, the feeling of the Baroque, the exaggerated, sometimes exaggerated sentiment that was conveyed in those works. And I think we see in these works almost a culmination of Nicolas's achievement as an artist, important to us, not just as a wonderful artist, but as one of our local people. He lives in Bloomington. It's important for us to have a relationship with him. We would be his museum, and I think it would be appropriate for people in wanting to learn more about his work that they would naturally come to us. And this represents a significant effort on the museum's part to acquire, let's say, a reference collection of his work, that anybody interested in his work in the future would quite naturally come here and be well rewarded from seeing significant examples of works from the major periods of his life. Now, what I quite like in this exhibition, we have a few instances where we can connect some of the works of art on the basis of geography. One of those examples is the Grant Wood portrait of this fellow who looks like he's just hit probably a pretty good golf shot. He doesn't look disappointed. This wonderful painting comes to us from the Crystal Bridges Art Museum and has been supported through a program, Art Bridges, which is another arm of Alice Walton's foundation, which has enabled us to bring many great works of art here to Peoria. Wood's paintings are relatively rare. We know them all. Relatively rare in the sense he didn't do too many, and most of them are already impounded in museum collections. I like this one, though. It's characteristic of Wood's work in that quite often there's a narrative element, a narrative component to what he's doing. He has something to say. Yeah. And in this instance, there's a lot of information in this painting that gives us clues about this individual, his life, probably near the end of his life. We see the autumnal oak leaves and the shell of an acorn which has fallen, suggesting the end of life. But here is this still relatively robust fellow having swung his golf club, looking with some caution, maybe apprehension and confidence into the future. I will add, it might strike modern viewers as curious that he is in a coat and tie. This is 1940, mind you, and my grandfather never played golf without wearing a tie. So it's not inconsistent. There's not some deeper message here, I believe.
And a commissioned portrait. So yes. We have to conclude that the subject maybe had some hand in some of the...
Yes, he probably told Wood what he wanted to do. And he kind of looks like a guy who's used to getting what he wants.
Yes.
And Wood did a wonderful job conveying that. Other elements that are quite attractive about the painting and characteristic of Wood are the slightly stylized trees, where he makes them in such a way that the forms begin to repeat. Also holds true for the slightly swelling lawn and the fence posts, and all characteristic of Wood's work. It's nice to have a painting like this in Peoria.
And for comparison, you've picked a work by the great photorealist Richard Estes.
Yes, and Richard, another, let's call him a home area guy, grew up in Sheffield, Illinois, just outside of Peoria. Not much of Sheffield remains today. I have known some people who knew his family, and I have asked them if they knew that one of those boys grew up to be a widely known artist. They all say, no way.
Oh my God.
I think it was a small town. Richard's interests, his natural proclivities caused him to be more reclusive and sort of keep his cards close to the chest.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until sometime later, after going to the Art Institute of Chicago School, that he began to find his own way, and then being introduced to the dealer Alan Stone was a major milestone in his life.
Well, this work it differs from what we know of Richard Estes.
Right.
The city geometries and perspectile play
Yes.
is not here.
No, it's not. To a degree, I believe what he's doing with these natural scenes, and this was painted in Acadia National Forest, and it's a little confrontational. It's a little off-putting. This is not a welcome-looking thing in the woods.
Yeah.
We're not going to go exploring in there.
Right.
We're going to stay on the path and probably keep going, but we're intrigued by all the compositional elements that he uses to draw us into this tangle of forms. Very complex, very rich, rewarding painting.
And into our exhibition, Folk, we have a couple of paintings by the painter Clementine Hunter.
Very interesting woman. I will say that at one point in time, I owned a small Clementine Hunter. Most of her work was done on a small scale. It was some sort of a tile, a utilitarian tile, so sort of a ready-made canvas for her. The two works in the exhibition are large, and quite significantly, one of them is from very early in her career. She didn't start painting, I think, until she was in her 50s. And the other work, the one with the yellow background, dates to the end of her career. Also interesting is she spent her entire life in one county in Louisiana, but lived in a South that was still trying to find its way after the Civil War. In my own view, it was great, the planning and everything that went into the Emancipation Proclamation, the war itself, to remedy these injustices, but there was no planning for day two. And consequently, many people suffered, they still do,
Yes.
for that. I love her work. There's an immediacy, there's a natural instinct for form and color that's quite compelling.
Do you think these paintings were quickly painted, or were these the product of some deliberation, some repainting, any knowledge about that?
Don't really know, but from having looked at a lot of her work, I would hazard the guess that in her early work would have taken a lot more time. Her later work, still in the same style, I think becomes a little formulaic.
Yeah.
The earlier work, there is a robustness to it. There's an energy that sparks from a naivete. She hasn't worked it all out.
Okay.
That's, I find, more attractive than the later works.
Well, we can kind of pinion off of Clementine Hunter to African-American male contemporary artist Glenn Ligon. In our exhibition, Glenn Ligon, I Am Somebody, the centerpiece, the flagship piece in the exhibition is from 1990. Anything that you can say about moving from Clementine's work to thinking about Glenn today?
Sure. In both instances, I think with Clementine Hunter, there's no way she could have explored the expressive sentiments, thoughts, ideas that Ligon could.
Yeah.
And that's generational.
Yeah.
As I said, I think she was 50 years old when she first started painting.
Right.
And for her, some of these truths, if you will,
Yeah.
were hardened into such a concrete reality that you didn't quite unpack them. If you unpack them, it would be more of a subconscious thing.
Sure.
Ligon's impulse is to unpack those through an aesthetic vision.
Yeah, a construct.
What I quite like about his work is that I am not immediately drawn into the subject matter, the narrative which he is exploring. I am drawn into it aesthetically. Mm-hmm. I love graphics. I collect books. That sort of imagery is quite natural to me. I'm very comfortable with it. I'm drawn into it, and then I discover the content.
Yeah.
And I think that's far more meaningful than having the content carry the aesthetics. There are a lot of artists who are well known where the content's first, then the aesthetics.
Right.
I don't think they're going to hold up well over time.
Yeah.
An artist like this, who draws us in aesthetically, and then presents his message, allows us to explore it on our own and under our own volition, because we're drawn in, we're excited about it, we're participating with it, we're interacting with it. It's not forced on us.
Correct.
I think his achievement will definitely stand up.
Finally, on our tour, we are confronted with an amazing object by the Renaissance sculptor, artisan Guglielmo della Porta.
What we're looking at is the deceased Christ. In the Christian iconography of this moment and other times, there were conscious decisions to depict the living Christ or the dead Christ to tie it into a specific aspect of the gospel narrative. I would certainly count myself as a Christian. One of the most troubling parts of the gospel is when Christ is on the cross dying and he says to his Father, "Why have you abandoned me?" This whole moment is fraught with so many interesting elements. An image like this, we've seen it so many times, we don't read those things right away. On the right side, where he was speared, we see the dried blood indicating that the chest, in fact, was up, so that he was in pain and agony, writhing on the cross, long enough for that blood to dry, so that when he finally expires, his body relaxes, the dried blood goes the other way. There's a very, very moving element. Lots of wonderful details here. We use the word the exquisite torsion and tension in Christ's figure that so powerfully conveys the suffering, the experience that he had on the cross. Della Porta owes a debt to Michelangelo, who was his contemporary. And Michelangelo is the one who really brought us a greater understanding of the expressive possibilities of human anatomy. Della Porta outlived Michelangelo, and for a moment in time, he was the principal sculptor in Rome. And that's extremely important because the Vatican was spending a lot of money on art. Think of the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation. There's a movement to this much more naturalistic, much more evocative form in art that's expressive, because again, most people were illiterate at this time, so they can't read the Bible.
Yeah.
And the stories, they either have to hear them or see representations of them.
Bill, it's always a treat for you to come to the curatorial realm of our museum. It's always fun to talk to you. It's always enlightening to discuss some of your personal interests in art. Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.